Now it's 10:35, and I think this is probably 10:30 Microsoft research time, so we can get started. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Eran Shtiegman to talk about Istanbul. That's the new live communication client. Eran is in charge of the requirements of Istanbul, and he also serves as the gateway between the Istanbul team and the rest of Microsoft. Right? That's my understanding. And with that, Istanbul talk.
Hi, I'm Eran. And hopefully Mu, the dev manager, is going to join us shortly, I hope. So I was hoping this was going to be sort of a collaborative talk, so I'm going to go through this presentation, and then I'm hoping to leave a lot of time at the end to sort of talk and have more discussion around future directions and things we're interested in looking at going forward, and also get more questions from you in terms of some of your experiences. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the RTC team. The RTC team is headed by Anoop, and our mission is to seamlessly connect people and information in real time. And that means delivering business efficiencies and accelerating informed decision making. One of our core goals is to make this easy to use. If you look at a lot of the collaboration software out there today, it's very complex. It's very difficult to use. Many times, the audio systems, for example, are very different from the data systems. So setting up a meeting that has both application sharing and audio conferencing is something that is very complicated. You have to set up two different systems. They don't talk to each other very well. So one of our key goals is really to make this easy to use. When we talk to customers, that's also one of their major pain points, is that there's all these different solutions out there, all these different types of software, and there isn't one consistent sort of easy-to-use system that they can use when they want to set up these collaborative sessions. Multimodal collaboration talks about having multiple modalities as part of your collaboration session. So not just talking about not just audio or just just application sharing, but instant messaging, video. Having all of these different modalities all within one session, and then seamlessly integrating into existing enterprise infrastructure. So our team is focused around enterprise users, and enterprise users using applications like Office, line of business applications all day, and tying this collaborative experience into those applications is a key part of what they're looking for. And I don't know how many of you are already using Windows Messenger and Office 11, but we've already started doing some of this with Office 11, where you have the Presence pawn available to you in Office, and you can start collaborative sessions directly from your email app. This is Mu is here to join me.
Mu is the dev manager on Istanbul, and this is the VPM. So that's
yeah. So at any point, if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to interrupt and ask any questions you might have. So client-server service continuum. So part of our team also offers a web service for basically a hosted outsourced solution for web conferencing. And so part of our goal as well is to sort of bridge this client-server service continuum and offer a solution that can scale from on-premises solution to a service solution seamlessly, and sort of transition as you add more participants from one to the other. So a key part of our vision talks about unified communications. So really to offer, to provide these types of solutions, we believe that we have to provide a unified communication system. So what does that really mean? At the core of a unified communication system is a single identity. So today, if you look at your communications, you have all these different identities, multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, IM addresses. All of these things get in the way of having a single unified experience. So at a core of the unified communication system is a single identity. Around that, we add presence. Presence provides context to that identity. So, what you're doing right now, whether you're busy or available, what devices you're accessible at, what are the capabilities of all of those devices, whether you want to communicate or not. So things like that add a lot of context to that identity. And then around that, we have all the different modalities that we allow you to communicate with. So data, application sharing, voice, video, instant messaging, email, all of these things leverage the identity, the single identity, and all the presence capabilities to provide a rich sort of communications environment. And on top of that, we have applications that leverage this infrastructure to provide value-added capabilities. So things like InfoAgent that look at all the presence information that's getting published and provide a set of rules to help you route all of that communications that's coming to you across all these different modalities. So when we look at a unified communication solution, not only does it provide value for end users in things like InfoAgent, improving productivity, multi-device access, things like that, but it also provides value to ISVs in that they have a single consolidated platform that they can build applications on top of, as well as to the IT or service operator in that it's now a single infrastructure that they can deploy and a single solution that they can deploy. So all of these things together, we believe, provide significant value. So when you think about telephony, and telephony, as I'll be talking about shortly, is a key part of the Istanbul release. But when you look at the telephony landscape, traditionally telephony and enterprise messaging infrastructures are very disconnected. Up until now, you've had one set of it, TDM infrastructure, TDM network, TDM servers, TDM applications, and all of that has been completely separate from everything in the enterprise messaging world. So your email and your phone systems and your IM systems are, very much separated, and in many ways duplicated as well. Because any type of, for example, BESCOM type rules that you would want to write on your phone system, you would have to do separately on your email system. And now with voice over IP, all of that is changing. So finally, voice is moving onto the data network. And as a result of that, we have the opportunity to consolidate all of these different things under a single umbrella and a single platform. So we believe that enterprise telephony will move to VoIP. But enterprises are not going to rip and replace their infrastructure overnight. So, phones are here, and they're going to be here for at least another 10 years or so. We're going to have to deal with that. And as a result, and also, the total cost of ownership is not going to be the significant driver for moving to voice over IP. So if you look at voice over IP, most voice over IP systems today, they don't cost any less than TDM systems. Initially it was marketed as being cheaper, but in the end, the total cost of ownership is not significantly lower for voice over IP system. We believe that productivity improvement, as well as application integration and new features that these systems are going to provide, is going to be the key driving factor for people who switch to voice over IP. Telephony, what is it?
Divided multiplex.
Yeah, it's basically the protocol that they use. So when we look at what Microsoft should be doing here is that we're looking to both provide a migration path and also add significant functionality to these solutions. So that means working with existing infrastructure, like your TDM infrastructure, this is the same way that ET does, and also building new capabilities and new functionality for voice over IP. So what is Istanbul? So Istanbul is a person-centric, presence-enabled, enterprise-grade unified communications client. And that's a loaded sentence. So unified communications client, what does that mean? It means seamlessly integrating all of the real-time modes of communications into a single experience. That hasn't been the case to date. There's a variety of different tools. You use different ones at different times. One of our key goals has been to sort of integrate all these different communications modes into a unified experience. It's also a person-centric experience. So rather than looking at things from a device point of view, we look at things from a person point of view. So the presence is about the person, not about the device. When you're calling a person, you're not calling a phone number or a device. It's also a replacement for Windows Messenger, NetMeeting, and ET. So although we don't have a lot of the advanced BESCOM functionality that ET does, ET, the Enhanced Telephony Prototype, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. It's initially was headed up by Anoop, and Eric Horowitz has done a lot of work with the BESCOM features, integrating that into it. It was a research project that was deployed within Microsoft.
What time do they have to use it? They don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
Is it a couple weeks?
Well, as probably a couple months.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a great, it's a software that links your PC and your telephone together. And to me, it's one of the most useful applications that I've used in the past few years.
Just go to ET phone on internet, ET phone, and you download it and play with it.
If you're sitting here on your laptop and you have a phone call in your office, it'll show up on your email, and you could reroute it to your cell phone right now if you want to take this call.
So this is some of the functionality, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So the second sort of pillar that we have is our enterprise focus. So if you look at a lot of the instant messaging, oh, there you go. See that pop up on my screen? That shouldn't have happened, but yeah, well, that's Istanbul basically telling me that somebody's calling me, and I could transfer it to my cell phone if I wanted to.
Suppression.
I thought I logged out, but I guess so. Anyway, yeah, I don't know why that didn't work. So enterprise focus. If you look at a lot of existing, let me just turn that off just in case.
That's all right. It shows features.
Yeah. So basically enterprise focus. If you look at a lot of the existing instant messaging presence applications out there, they're very much consumer focused. And not that that's a bad thing, everyone is a consumer in the end. But when we were thinking about Istanbul, we really wanted to rethink instant messaging and presence and see, what are some of the capabilities that enterprise users would be looking for in an instant messaging and presence client that today's solutions don't provide. And so that was one of our key areas that we focused on. And obviously one of the key things there as well was integrating with the existing applications like Office. And then our third pillar was an integrated voice solution. So this is sort of the ET stuff that I talked about earlier. If you look at a desktop of a regular iWorker, you'll see they have a PC on their desktop and they have a phone on their desktop. Those two things aren't really connected today. You get calls on your phone. You're using your PC. There's no interaction between the two, and there's not much value that the PC adds to the phone. So
Not completely true. I get my voicemails in my Outlook.
that's true. So that's a beginning of that. But when we were looking at that, we thought there was a lot more that the PC can do. There's a lot more value that the PC can add to your phone communications. So we really wanted to think about that and see how we could add more value. So the first sort of project that came out of that was ET Phone, which was basically integrating on the server side with your PBX, so that anytime you get a call, for example, a little toast like the one that you just saw pops up on my screen, I know who's calling, and I don't have to look to the phone to see who it is, and it also resolves the number, so I know who the person is as opposed to what the phone number is and things like that. Or I could do things like, just click to call people directly from my buddy list. So I don't have to look up someone's phone number and then go type it in on the phone and things like that. So that was a big part of what we did in Istanbul, is sort of provide that integration between the PC and the phone. And beyond that, we also looked at VoIP. So Windows Messenger and MSN Messenger both let you do VoIP peer-to-peer calls, but we enhanced that functionality significantly by adding more features that are typical of traditional soft phones, things like being able to put the call on hold or transferring a call or all these types of things that you're used to doing on your phone.
Quick question here. How many different vendors for the PBX, and how many of them will expose their APIs to Istanbul so that Istanbul can talk to the...
So it's actually the other way around. So what we've done is, rather than have two, so there's, the problem with the PBX world is that there's all these different PBXs, and each one of them has, they're all proprietary. None of them have very standard interfaces. and we didn't really want to be in the business of having to like, certify our solution with each one of these vendors. So we did two things. The first thing we did was we defined a standard. We looked at standards out there, and one of the existing, probably the more popular CTI, which stands for Computer Telephony Integration, standards out there is called ECMA. It's a European standard. And a lot of the existing PBXs support ECMA CTI interfaces on their PBX. And ECMA also has an XML. You can basically take that. It has a call model and a bunch of functionality that you can basically encode in XML. So what we did is we took that standard schema and we put that on top of SIP. So basically, our solution is all SIP-based, which is another IETF standard for voice over IP and instant messaging. And we basically are tunneling this ECMA, all these ECMA messages within our SIP channel. So that, and we made that public as a standard interface. And we allow any third party that wants to basically can go and implement that interface and interface with Istanbul. So that's one thing we did. We also talked to a lot of PBX vendors directly, evangelizing this new solution, as well as we've made some partnerships with third parties that their business is basically they have a gateway that speaks our SIP interface on one end and can translate to a variety of different PBXs on the other end. So basically you can buy one of these, Genesis is one example of that, you can buy one of these Genesis servers and deploy it, and then it interfaces with us on one end, and on the other end it knows all the different dialects of all the different PBXs, and it can basically convert the SIP signaling into proprietary CTI links. So,
can you review the current agreements with Genesis about sharing out their infrastructure?
We're not sharing out their infrastructure per se.
Will that be available through licensing directly with them for third parties?
No, basically, customers who are going to use this would buy the Microsoft solution and also buy the Genesis server.
I see.
So it's not a sharing of code.
Are they OEM or are they separate?
Separate for now. I mean, there's probably going to be some professional services that are set up around deploying this type of stuff. But right now it's separate. And yeah, I mean, part of this is that it's pretty complicated to deploy one of these solutions. It's not a trivial undertaking by any means. So that's sort of the PBX integration that we've done. We've also done PSTN Conference Bridge support. We've also included that as part of Istanbul, and that's basically allowing you to do your the MCI conferences that you do. You can basically use Istanbul to control those, see all the participants, add things like instant messaging and application sharing, things like that onto your PSTN conferencing. So these are basically the top three pillars of Istanbul. And I don't actually have a demo to show you today, so let's get to this. All right, so the first sort of set of features is all around presence. And like I said before, presence is at the core of our experience. And so we really wanted to think a lot about presence and see some new things that we can add that provide more value in this release. So one of the first things we did was we added this concept of a custom presence note. So you can see the note over here, which says, I don't know if you can read that, basically says, in a usability lab until 5. Or in here also you see Craig also has one that says, I have to leave at 4 p.m. today. Basically it lets users add a custom presence note onto their presence. So that provides more sort of detailed information on what they're doing. And then anybody who has them on their buddy list, anybody who subscribed to their presence would get that information. And one of the cool things that we've done with that is integrated with Exchange, so that if, for example, you set your OOF message in Exchange, we automatically mine that and add that as a, if you tell us to, we'll mine that and put that as part of your presence information. So as soon as you have an OOF message, that gets published through our system, and anybody who's watching you can now see your OOF message. So rather than having to spend half an hour writing you a detailed email message and then getting a response back that you're OOF, now you can sort of just, by browsing your contact list or searching across the directory, you can see in advance whether the person is OOF or whether they're in the office and what they're doing. So that's a pretty popular feature, and we're getting a lot of good feedback about that. Another thing we're doing is we've interfaced with the Exchange Free Busy data. So, and this is sort of different from the way that Outlook does this. What we do is on my, let's say I'm running Istanbul on my machine, I would go and get my free busy information, not where I am, but just whether I'm free or busy in a meeting, things like that, and publish that as part of my presence. And then anyone who's subscribed to me would have access to that information. So they would not need to have access to my Exchange Free Busy store, for example. So this would work across companies and federated links and things like that. So so basically what you're seeing here at the bottom on this contact card, if I can get the mouse to work, is sort of a little control that shows what Craig's doing for the day and whether he's busy or he's free. Or I can scroll that, and we publish basically, well, we publish about, I think, 48 hours worth, but we only display 24 because of time zone issues and things like that. So we basically have 24 hours worth of free busy information.
How do you scope that? Are you essentially subscribed to everybody in your access list, or do you scope it to just the people you're actively...
No, so that's the thing, right? We don't have to do that. Like on my machine, when I'm running, I don't have to get anybody's free busy information directly from Exchange. It just comes as part of the presence doc for anybody that I'm watching. Because basically, each person is responsible for publishing their own free busy information. So we don't hit the servers very often at all. So basically, each person hits it for themselves once every 15 minutes. And that's it. And everybody who's watching them gets that for free.
Yeah, but the question is, how many people are you watching at any particular time?
Anybody that you're subscribed to, you're getting their free busy.
What determines that? Is it?
It's basically as soon as you add them to your contact list. As soon as you add them to your contact list, you're subscribed to them, and then so the presence works in two ways on our system. If you add somebody to your contact list, that means that automatically subscribes you to their presence, and that's when they'll get that little pop-up that says so and so's added you to their buddy list. Do you want to see? Do you want to allow them to see your presence, and do you want to add them to your contact list? Basically, that's an ACLing mechanism that we have that allows you to control sort of who you provide your presence information to. So as soon as you add somebody to your contact list, they subscribe to your presence, and they have access to that. And anytime that presence changes, they get notified of that. And the second model is the get presence functionality. So this is just if you're, for example, just search for random people in the organization. Anytime you get a result and you select it, we do a get presence. So it's a one-off, oh, let me go get some presence about this person, and gives you sort of a picture of what they're doing right now, but it's not a long-lived subscription.
Is there some way of controlling how much information is given out? Like, can I divide my contacts into different categories?
Not yet. That's probably one of the more popular features that people are asking for, and we're definitely looking at doing that in the next release. But right now, it's pretty much all so it's just on a all or nothing on a per contact level.
Now, did you say this works between enterprises?
Yeah. So let me take a minute to sort of explain how that works. So the first version so this is a client for. This is a client for enterprise users, and as part of the deployment, there's also a server. And I have like a slide where I talk about the topology. But a way to think about this is, if you look at your traditional instant messaging clients, they connect up through a public cloud like MSN, AOL, or any of those. But in this case, so this is very similar to Exchange and Outlook. So Istanbul basically connects to an enterprise server through a secure TLS link. And then one of the new things we just added with a new version of the server that just shipped last week, basically, is federation support. So you can set up secure links between your server and servers in other enterprises, and we call that federation. And so basically, if the IT department at Microsoft decides that they do a lot of business with Dell and they want to have this secure channel with Dell, then they could set a federated link between Microsoft and Dell, and you would be able to get presence and IM people at Dell. So it's it's an open system that you can basically just federate as many enterprises as you want. Another interesting thing that we announced a couple months ago is we made some deals with the leading public clouds. So they're also building federation links to the public cloud. So within Istanbul, you'll be able to add MSN buddies, Yahoo buddies, AOL buddies, all of these types of buddies you'll be able to add on your client, and through this federated link, if the enterprise wishes to enable it, you'll be able to communicate with them on whatever client they're running. So that's a pretty cool thing. So getting back to presence, I want to just take a minute or two before I go on with this to just sort of talk about like how we view presence. So presence for us, at least in the UI, has a couple different elements to it. So the first level, the top level, sort of is the icon, and many of you are familiar probably with a pawn. We're probably going to replace the pawn with something new, and these images are not final yet in terms of the actual icons and such. But the top level for the presence indication is this what we call availability, and that's basically today that's the overlay on the pawn that says whether you're available online, offline, busy, do not disturb. I think there's about 4 values for that, and away is another one. So that's sort of the top level, and the purpose of that is to indicate how available is this person to communicate right now. So are they busy? Are they available? Have they said do not disturb, which means please don't bug me right now. So that's the sort of the top level indication of what that person how available they are to communicate. The second, more detailed indication is this string over here, online, idle, busy, and that's the user's activity, and the purpose of that is to sort of indicate what the person is doing, and it's a person level thing as opposed to device level thing. So this could be things like oof, in a meeting, busy, idle, online. There's more values than what you get on the top level, and many of those are user controlled right now, although some of them are automated, like oof. So for example, if we notice that your oof in Exchange, we'll automatically set your user activity to oof. And then the third sort of dimension that we have is the machine device state, and you can see that here on these little icons, and it's basically your machine state on all your different devices. So whether you're active, whether you're idle, things like capabilities on your devices. And what we do is we take all of that information. Yeah.
How smart is that to set up everything to OOF when I set the OOF on? Usually, the day before I leave for a trip, I already set the OOF on, so it's all set when I'm on the plane. I can still be a few hours here. It may interest people to know I'm a few hours here, but I like my OOF message to be in good shape.
Right, and that's a good point, and it's kind of hard to figure out what to do there, and this is basically leading up to what I was saying, which is basically, we have all these sources of presence information that we get, and then we try and aggregate them into something that makes sense. And, it's not a trivial task. The algorithm that we have right now is pretty complicated, and, we know we're not going to get it right 100% of the time, and it's something that we hope to sort of modify and change as we get more feedback from people. But one of the things we did, for example, with that OOF thing is rather than automatically update your top level presence, this availability to the fact that you're OOF, that's probably not what people want, because they might be OOF, but then if they log in somewhere, they're on the road, for example, then they do want people to know that they're online and they're available to communicate. So that's one of the things, for example, that we did not aggregate onto the top level. So although the detailed message says, this person is out of the office, the top level one still says that whether you're busy or available or not available, basically. So, yeah.
Is there a concept of group presence? For example, I work with some people on the project. They start chatting about it. I'd like to know what they're talking about, maybe join the conversation.
So that also comes to one of the concepts that we're looking at for the next version. I have a slide at the end where I talk about some of that, but we are starting to think about things like that. We call them conversation spaces, and it's basically this idea of a virtual space where you can basically communicate in, think of it like a virtual meeting room or something like that you can participate in. But I'll talk about that at the end. So no, we don't have anything like that in the current release, but groups in general is one of the things we'd like to focus on.
Kind of as a related feature, can I send an instant message to an alias?
No, again, that's all that group type of functionality is something we're looking at in the next release. One thing you can do, though, today is that you can do this through third-party applications. So, for example, you can write a bot. I don't know if you know what a bot is, but basically a bot is something that looks like a contact on your buddy list, but it's actually a machine. It's not a person, and basically, so it's a server that registers itself as this URI. And basically, you can send this server a message, and then it can do whatever it wants.
Relay it out or whatever.
Yeah, it can relay it out. So, for example, help desk is a good example of this. So, help desk, Microsoft could write, for example, a help desk bot at Microsoft, which would be helpdesk at Microsoft.com, and anytime you'd send that a message, it would find the most available help desk person and route that message to them, and they could respond to you and things like that. So there's a lot of cool things that you can write on top of our APIs that would enable you to do things like that. But we don't have anything per se built in. Like one of the things we're looking at in the next version is DL integration, so you get that sort of built in with existing DLs in Exchange.
But this API is for the bots in the first version.
Yeah, that's already there.
Oh, with Windows Messenger, you can do that.
Yeah. It's not used all that frequently yet, but you can do it.
But API to bot is the real-time collaboration, real-time communication API. You can search that in SDN.
So, all right. So, some more things that we've added. Some more sources of presence that we try to integrate in is automated on the phone presence. So, whenever you're on the phone, with all this integration that we have with the PBXs, we automatically get an indication from the PBX, and we change your status to on the phone, and then we change your availability to busy. So we assume that if you're on the phone, you're pretty busy. So that's one of the new automated presence indications that we add. We also provide the ability to tag contacts. So with some of the consumer clients, basically they give you this pop-up alert anytime somebody comes online. And with enterprise users, I don't know how valuable that is, but definitely one of the things that people are interested in is there's a specific person or set of people that they want to monitor more closely, or they want to get a hold of, and so tagging a contact basically says, I'm interested in getting more information about this person, and then we provide you notifications anytime their presence changes. So if you want to get a hold of somebody, you can get an indication anytime they're on the phone, off the phone. They're coming online, they're going offline, things like that. So that's another one of the new things we've added. So contact management. So when we looked at instant messaging and presence and this application in general and enterprise scenarios, one of the key things that came out is the ability to access all of your both personal and corporate contacts. So one of the new features that we've added is this iterative search capability that basically allows you can basically type in anybody's name in here, and as soon as you start typing, I can demo this for you afterwards. We get all the results. We basically cache all the entire GAL as well as all your Outlook personal contacts on the machine. So as soon as you start typing, we'll provide results of all the people across both directories as well as your buddy list, and provide those results along with presence for all of those people. And this is becoming a very powerful tool. I think to be able to, if you just want to call somebody real quick, just type in their name, boom, click the call widget over here, and you can make a phone call to them. So this is one of the key new features that we've added. Another thing that we've added is this area here at the bottom, which we're calling the live contact card. So anytime you select a person in the rest of the UI, it basically provides more details for that person that's selected. What their name, their title, the company they work at, any presence note they have, their free busy information, all of that kind of stuff. And another thing that you can notice here also is this little MSN butterfly. That's basically an indication of what network they're coming in on. So I talked about the federation support earlier. So basically, if someone's a MSN buddy, you would get this little butterfly. If they were an AOL or a Yahoo buddy, you would get the little AOL or Yahoo icons. and that basically lets you know what network that person is connected through. So that's some of the contact management enhancements that we've done. So for instant messaging is still the primary use of our clients. And so, we didn't want to forget the instant messaging users out there. So one of the key things that we've added to instant messaging is MPOP support. So already with Windows Messenger and the first version of Live Communication Server, you could log in with multiple PCs simultaneously. But with the current version, what happens is anytime somebody sends you a message, the server sort of does its own routing, and based on an algorithm that it has, decides what's the most appropriate endpoint to send that message to, and it gets delivered to just that one endpoint. And in many cases, that's not the right. It doesn't pick the right one. And so what happens is that I'm working here on my laptop, and someone sends me a message, and for whatever reason, the server decided to send it to my desktop, and so I never get that message. So one of the new things that we've added is this MPOP support for forking messages. So basically, anytime someone sends you a message, that could be either an IM or a voice over IP call or an application sharing session or anything that we support, basically, the server will fork that request to all of your endpoints, and then we show the toast on all of your different devices, and we let the user sort of decide where they want to take that session. And then if they don't respond within about 10 seconds or so, then we auto accept that request on the device that the client believes is the most active, basically. So we're hoping that this addresses a lot of people's pain in terms of messages getting routed to the wrong endpoint. Another thing we've added is email integration. So basically, after you have an instant messaging conversation with a single click, you can just say save the email, and that'll save your instant messaging conversation directly into your inbox so that you can go back to it afterwards and get any information that was in that. We haven't added any other logs external to the inbox, just because we believe that it's probably more important to integrate with existing. You don't want to go have to search for instant messages in one place and email in another place. It'd be kind of nice if everything was all in one place. Sort of talks to our vision as well going forward. So that's one new things that we've added. We've also trying to improve the readability of IM. So we have these different. I don't know how well you can tell it here, but basically we have these different shades. So anytime a different person talks, they're sort of treated with a different sort of background color. So it's sort of easy to differentiate who's calling or who's typing the message. And some other small things like adding timestamps and improving sort of the way that notifications are handled. And then another big thing that we've added is this roster. So when you're doing just an IM conversation with one person, it's probably not so important. But as soon as this grows into a larger conference of multiple participants, and especially when you're doing more than just IM, if you're doing voice as well or video or application sharing or some of these other things, providing a rich roster, which is this sort of list of participants over here, that shows you basically what each person is doing. So like Tom, for example, here is connected to both IM, phone, and video, and being able to sort of perform actions on a per individual level, as well as sort of give you status indications, like whether they're currently talking, whether they're currently typing for an IM message. So each one of these icons has these different states that it gives you information on. And we've done this in a modular way, so if you're not really interested in all that because it's too much information, you can just minimize these panes and sort of get a simpler experience. Because one of the key things also that we heard from customers was that they wanted to have a more sort of modular design where the client doesn't take up significant real estate on their screen, because in many cases they're multitasking with a variety of different things, and they don't want this thing to take up their entire screen. So then we come to telephony, and this is probably the biggest new feature that we've added, is this integration with the phone system that I talked about earlier. So the ability to control your desktop phone, make it ring, basically, so you can just click the call directly from your buddy list, and it'll basically take your phone off hook, so it'll go onto speakerphone and dial the other person, and then you can control that call as well from your PC. Do things like transfer it to somebody else, conference in more people, disconnect the call. And then also, whenever you receive a call, getting this toast on the screen that tells you who the call is from, and letting you deflect or forward that call to a different phone number. So that's one of the key new features that we've added. In addition to that, we've also improved our point-to-point VoIP experience. So you can use your PC as a voice endpoint, and when you do that, you have many more capabilities. So you can transfer the call, you can put the call on hold. Yeah.
Does the point-to-point VoIP go through the closed enterprise boundary?
I can if you have the right infrastructure in place. So that's it's kind of complex today. It doesn't go over. It's not over TCP. It's UDP. So you need to have something in the DMZ that will allow that to happen. And there's solutions from third parties to do that. But it's not something that would just work unless the enterprise deployed some sort of server in the DMZ to be able to open up the firewall.
Okay. And what if I'm traveling on the road, and when I click on the call, does it route the call to my desktop phone or through the VPN to my cell phone?
So you can decide. Basically, we have this concept of what's your default device for making calls, and you can basically decide whether, when you're calling a phone number, whether you want that to go out through your desktop phone or whether you want to use your PC as your endpoint. And so you can configure that basically on demand, and it sort of remembers what you did last, so it'll sort of default to that.
But I have to connect it through VPN to the corporate network, right?
That can depend also, again, on the enterprise. If an enterprise deploys something in the DMZ that allows you to do it without VPNing in, it's possible. So, it's not really up to us. It's more up to what's deployed in the enterprise.
In fact, today, many Microsoft people are already doing that. From Capel, they do VPN back to the corporate net, and then do VPN, do voice over IP calls to their local networks, for Simpson.
Yeah, we basically deployed this as a test app about a year ago, and all of a sudden, about a month ago or so, we noticed that there's how many daily calls? Like 6,000. Yeah, there's basically 6,000 calls a day at Microsoft. People using PC to phone to call in. To call, and it's only set up for internal. Actually, it's only set up for internal extensions at Microsoft. So these are basically people that are on the road that are calling Microsoft, and that's 6,000 a day. So I think the main reason for that is just easier, right? If you're in a hotel somewhere, you're not really sure, and it's expensive to call back. This is just a really easy, and basically anyone, you can get data connectivity pretty much anywhere now. It's kind of funny, but it seems like it's easier and cheaper to get data connectivity and then use voice over IP to call than it is to call directly to the phone.
Well, one of the nice feature about the Windows Messenger is that you don't need to go VPN to use Windows Messenger. You can go through HTTPS, but the voice feature doesn't work on that configuration. So
it won't work unless unless the enterprise has deployed something to make it work, which not too many have yet. And what you're talking about is not actually Windows Messenger. It's more MSN Messenger, which works over HTTPS. Yeah, Windows Messenger, like the MSNP stack in Windows Messenger will work over.
No, it's today. So if you.
Oh, he's talking about that. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
OTT deploy.
Yeah, if they deployed an outside, but it's not. Yeah, they've deployed basically a proxy that will enable that. So that's because the signaling basically goes over TCP, but
the media
is UDP. So I also talked about PSTN conferencing integration. So if you're using a conference bridge to make audio calls, then you can basically use Istanbul to start up that call. So you can schedule a call in Outlook, for example. It'll paste in a little link to that Outlook invitation, and then when the meeting is about to start, you basically just click on that link. It'll launch Istanbul. It will basically connect you to the bridge. You can tell the bridge which number you want it to call you back at, and then you can see all the different participants in the conference, and you can do things like instant message them and do application sharing and things like that. So that's telephony. So client-side rules. This is sort of we've taken some of the very basic best comm rules that Eric Horvitz and his team have incorporated into the ET client and added them to Istanbul as well. So the most basic feature allows you to statically forward your calls. So you can basically say, I now want all my calls that are supposed to be going to my desktop phone to be rerouted to a different phone number, and just statically set that. That's one sort of basic thing that we enable. Another cool feature that we have is this dynamic forwarding based on presence. So basically, when you set up Istanbul, you say, on this machine, for example, the phone that I want associated with this machine is my cell phone, because when I'm on my laptop, usually I'm away from my desk. So if I'm using this laptop and any calls come into my desktop phone, I want them to automatically be forwarded to my cell phone. And then I can also say, if I'm not available on any machine, then forward it to this other number. So basically, if you have one machine in the office, one machine at home, and one mobile machine, you can basically, based on this presence information, it'll route all your calls to the appropriate device automatically. Another thing we do is we automatically mute your PC volume as soon as you get a phone call. This is one of those small little features that sounds kind of trivial, but a lot of people, as soon as they have it, they're really passionate about it. It was one of the more popular features in ET Phone that we've added as well. And then we also have these rules for do not disturb and conference calls. So anytime we have all, depending on the granularity that you set, basically, if you could set, basically, if you're do not disturb, you set yourself as do not disturb, your calls will automatically go to voicemail. Any notifications will automatically be silenced. And there's a variety of rules like that you can set, as well as for busy, you can also say what you want the behavior to be. So like the way we set it up out of the box is when you're busy, like it won't show you any audio indications, it won't show you any toast, but your phone calls still come in. As soon as you set it to do not disturb, you don't get any of your phone calls either. They all go to voicemail. So we don't have any capability to set that on a per person level, or all the advanced stuff that Bestcom enables, but we have some of the basic functionality in there, and we hope to incorporate a lot more going forward. So audio video, we've also done some major improvements on our audio video engine. So we've added the new RT video video codec. So 30 frames per second, SIF resolution. So finally, it's a lot bigger than it was, 4 times bigger than it was in Windows Messenger, and the quality is great. So this is a real improvement from the previous version, and it finally, I think, makes video really useful and usable, basically.
So today, do we support multi-point video, or is it still point?
No, we don't. It's still point-to-point in terms of the client itself. So peer-to-peer, it's point-to-point. But we will have support for audio-video MCUs. So if you deploy an MCU, it's a multi-point conferencing unit. So it's a server, basically, that sits on your network that knows how to get multiple streams and basically combine them into a single stream that it sends the client. So if you have an MCU deployed on your network, then you can do multi-party audio-video using Istanbul. And it basically leverages the same, on the signaling side, it leverages the same protocol work that we've done to integrate with the PCN conference bridge. So basically you get the list of all the participants and what they're doing and all that kind of stuff.
So is this MCU we're building it ourselves, or is it third party?
No, it's just third parties like RadVision, others that are building this. Polycom, First Virtual, those types of companies. And then multimodal, multi-party conversations. So, like I said earlier, a core sort of focus for us has been sort of providing this integrated, unified experience that scales from a single modality into this multimedia type conference, as well as from a single person to multiple people. So, one of the things we've added is multi-party application sharing. So now you can have peer-to-peer. You can add up to, 32 in theory participants and share applications. Audio conferencing support that I talked about, and then also, the ability to sort of have all of these different modalities in a single unified experience. this might sound simple, but we've spent significant time trying to figure out how to integrate all these different modalities into a single experience. There's a lot of sort of complexity there, especially on the phone side, because the signaling for that is basically all going over the PSTN, and there's not much that we get there, so it's really hard to associate these modalities together, because all we get from the phone system is basically a phone number, and we have to figure out what that is and whether that session belongs to this other session this other instant messaging session that you've got going on right now. So there's a lot of little tricks and things that we've added to sort of make that work. So the end-to-end topology, I talked about this a little bit, but basically, the home server. Well, I can just do this on the mouse, basically. The home server is the main server that the clients. So you have the two clients over here. You have Alice and Carol, and you have the home server, which is the main server that they connect to, which does authentication, authorization, routing. It's basically a SIP registrar and proxy. So it routes all requests, and it also serves as a registration point for that client, and publishes all that information basically so that any other people can find you. So it acts as a rendezvous point as well. And so you have the home server. We also have the phone system over here, your legacy PBXs that control your phones. And you have the PBX database that contains all the line and phone information, which gets published into the Active Directory, at which point we get that information to our address book server and publish that to the user's desktop so that they know all the phone numbers for all the people in the enterprise. And in addition to that, the remote call control gateway also gets that information, so it can authorize requests. So when you say, I want this phone to make a call, it can authorize and say, oh yeah, this is Eran's phone, so he's allowed to make this phone call, as opposed to, no, he's trying to make a call using Bill Gates' phone. So the remote call control gateway really does two things. It routes and converts the signaling from our standard SIP remote call control signaling into these proprietary CTI links, and it also serves as the authorization point for those requests. And then we also have SIP to PSTN gateways, so that you can make calls, VoIP calls, basically to the PSTN network. And this gateway basically transcodes the audio as well as the signaling from voice over IP to PSTN. It's connected to the legacy PBX. So that's sort of the different elements that we have in our solution. So going forward, I've talked about pretty much the things that we have today. And when I look forward, we're just at the very beginning of this, and there's still a lot more that we're looking to do. And so I just tried to think about some of the things we're looking at going forward, and how the research team and you basically can help us with some of these things that we're looking at going forward. So the first one, and the most obvious one, is the info agent DESCOM work that Eric's team is doing, and incorporating more of that functionality into our next generation client. I think for info agent, I think the value of it will increase as well if we have a unified solution. So I know there was all this info agent work happening at Microsoft. I'm not sure whether that's still around or whether it's fizzled away completely, but I really believe that once we have this routing and all this advanced logic work across not just instant messaging and phone calls, but also email and all these other modalities, that'll provide a lot more value. And so we're really interested in sort of pushing that agenda at Microsoft. I think also more automation. People don't, like what we're seeing is even for the basic presence of going in and changing your presence to busy, people just don't do it. They want the system to automatically do it for them. So I think more work has to happen in terms of automating some of these rules. Improving the UI. The UI is pretty complicated still. Our UI, people are still confused with, and it's only offering some of the really basic functionality. So I think this is like a really difficult task, and coming up with a simple UI to enable this type of functionality is really difficult. And then the server-side implementation. One of the key reasons we didn't really we couldn't really add much of the advanced functionality in this release that we didn't have a server-side implementation. Basically, the client has to be running in order for all this stuff to work. The next release, we want to implement this logic on the server side, so you don't have to have a client running. So that's some of the Info Agent Bestcom stuff. In terms of presence, going forward as well, I think, we're kind of, there's a lot of performance issues that we have with presence today. Having everybody, giving everybody access to presence information is a great thing, but it's also probably the single most difficult thing for our server to keep up with in terms of the number of requests that it generates. So coming up with a more scalable and secure peer-to-peer implementation for how presence gets distributed, I think is going to be a key thing for us going forward. We're sort of reaching the limits of what we can do, and we've actually had to scale back the UI, for example. We don't get presence results for all your search results automatically. The user has to select it, and the reason for that is if we were to do that, our server would probably, wouldn't be able to sustain all those requests. So coming up with a more scalable model for peer-to-peer presence, I think, is going to be important. Federated presence also provides a whole new set of requirements and complexity. So once you're getting presence from all these different networks, also there's a lot of sort of conversion and a lot of things that have to happen there. And that sort of talks to sort of all these new sources for presence as well. Things like GPS data, information from the mobile network. There's all these different systems out there that we can get presence information from, and figuring out a good way to do that is also going to be sort of one of the things we're going to look at going forward. And then, I've talked about this a little bit. Sort of the aggregation and display of presence is also very challenging. Like trying to understand, how we can get all these different, we can get all this presence information, but just sort of dumping it all to the user and showing them all this presence information is not, not all that readable and not all that usable. And figuring out what the right algorithm is in terms of aggregating it and what should automatically affect your availability and what shouldn't, and things like that is sort of this ongoing algorithm that we keep sort of playing with and improving. And then ACLing of presence, which someone talked about as well, is also going to be a very interesting problem going forward. So figuring out who has access to what level of my presence information. And being able to do that in a way where certain people have more and other people have less, and partitioning the data such that people have only the information that you want them to have. There's a lot of privacy concerns around that. So that's presence. VoIP is again a new area. We believe that there's the current sort of VoIP solutions around voice. Basically just replicate the user experience that you have on your desktop phone and enable that functionality over IP. That's great, and it allows us to integrate the infrastructure, but it doesn't really do much and for the end user. Their experience is the same. So really rethinking what we can do with voice over IP and redefining the voice experience on the PC is going to be something that we're going to be thinking about going forward. So things like push-to-talk, for example, speech-to-text, some of these technologies that are available on the PC, how can we sort of make the voice experience better? Things like searching through archived voice, technologies like that. And then another sort of important thing with voice over IP is the quality of the experience. So today it's still, voice over IP is getting easier to use, and Skype, for example, have done a really good job of making it just work. But I think there's still a lot more work we can do to sort of improve that experience, make sure it works much better with the hardware that you have, make sure that it just works across all these different firewalls and NATs and all these different things that are out there. So there's a lot of good work that can go on there. Contact enhancements, things like the DL integration, contextual groups. So these are things like people that are near me, people I'm meeting today, like sort of adding a lot more intelligence to the contacts and the groups that I have. Social networking, this is like a classic, the contact list itself is a list of all the people that you know, and so building a social networking map, basically based on your contact list, could be an interesting thing. I don't know if anyone's done that yet, but it's sort of one of the things that we've thought about. And then bots, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but adding more sort of person-to-machine interaction. Conversation spaces, I mentioned briefly as well, and this is sort of a concept that we have. You know, today on your buddy list, all you have are people, and you know, bots is an example of something that's on your buddy list today that sort of looks like a person, but it's not really a person. Going forward, we really want to think about you know, these objects on your contact list more generically as just an object that has presence, and the presence for that object could be, you know, doesn't necessarily need to be online, offline. It could be a whole variety of things. So one example of that is a SharePoint site that could live on your buddy list, and the presence for that thing could be, you know, the presence notifications you get for that could be, you know, documents that are getting uploaded, the people that are currently sort of connected to this site, people who are currently on it, if there's any conversations that are currently occurring on this site. So really have this concept of turning a SharePoint site into this live sort of entity that you can use as a rendezvous point for different types of communications. So, you know, one of the things we're thinking about is always on audio video. So you can basically log into this conversation space, and both audio and video would just be going on, and basically it acts as this virtual open space environment where, you know, if somebody wants to go to lunch, they can just shout it, hey, anybody want to go to lunch? Or if you have a question, you can just sort of shout it out, and anybody who's sort of logged into this thing would get that indication and would get that alert and be able to sort of participate in this conversation. So these are sort of things that we're thinking about. And then the last one is business process integration. And that's also like a big thing that we're hearing from customers, and we know this is going to be really big going forward. We haven't done too much yet, but you know, there's a lot of line of business applications that are out there that could be significantly improved with integration with some of these real-time systems. So role-based routing, I talked about that for help desk, for example. IM forms, so being able to get like some sort of notification via IM that something's happened, and having a form there that enables you to sort of take it to the next part of the process. Things like that. So I think there's still a lot of work there to be done with integrating line of business applications. So these are some of the things I've thought about. Basically, I'm pretty much done, so if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about.
Let's first thank the speaker. Actually, before we take any questions, I want to have